In the vibrant streets of Miami, amidst the gleaming office buildings and sun-kissed palm trees, sat Grand Lux Motors, a high-end car dealership renowned for its collection of luxury vehicles. The showroom, located in the heart of the bustling city, showcased an impressive array of cars, from sleek sports cars to the most opulent luxury sedans. It was a space where only the most elite came to browse and purchase their next high-end vehicle. Lucas Bennett, a 34-year-old businessman, had recently acquired the dealership after a series of successful ventures in the finance world. Though he had made a name for himself in business, Lucas was not one to flaunt his wealth. He prided himself on staying humble, blending into the background instead of standing out. Today, dressed casually in a simple navy hoodie, well-worn jeans, and sneakers, Lucas wanted to see how his newly acquired dealership was performing behind closed doors, without anyone recognizing him as the new owner. Lucas parked his modest car, a far cry from the extravagant vehicles displayed in the showroom, at the far end of the parking lot. He intentionally chose an unmarked space, far away from the more luxurious spots reserved for customers. As he stepped out of the car, he looked at the dealership's facade with a sense of determination. His decision to dress in an unremarkable manner wasn't just about fitting in. It was part of his plan to observe the dealership from an honest, undistracted perspective. He wanted to understand how his staff operated when they didn't know the new owner was observing them. He walked up to the entrance of Grand Lux Motors, pushing open the heavy glass door. Instantly, the cool air from the air conditioning hit him. The showroom was in stark contrast to the heat of the Miami sun outside. The cars inside gleamed under bright lights, their polished surfaces reflecting the room's ambient glow. The scent of fresh leather and wax filled the air as Lucas walked further into the showroom. As he moved through the space, Lucas noticed the subtle shift in the employees' demeanor. The chatter around the front desk faded as they looked him over. Their glances, quick and judgmental, were fleeting, but Lucas could tell that they were taking in his casual attire and silently questioning his status. It was a shift he had grown familiar with throughout his life, the kind of silent judgment that came when someone didn't fit the expected mold. But he wasn't here to judge them. He was here to observe. From across the showroom, Emma Harris, the head sales manager, stepped forward. Emma, a woman in her early 40s, had been working at Grand Lux Motors for over a decade. She was known for her sharp intellect, striking professionalism, and no-nonsense approach to sales. Dressed in a fitted navy blazer, pencil skirt, and high heels, Emma carried an air of authority that made her a commanding presence in any room. She approached Lucas with the kind of poise that suggested both confidence and curiosity. "Excuse me," Emma said, her voice cool and controlled as she took in his appearance. "Can I help you with something, sir?" Lucas smiled lightly, his demeanor calm but casual. "Just looking around," he replied, gesturing to the nearby cars. He made sure his tone was friendly but nonchalant. Emma's eyes narrowed just slightly as she assessed him. The smile on her face, initially warm and polite, started to fade, replaced by something less inviting. "Are you interested in purchasing a car today?" she asked, her voice tinged with skepticism. Lucas maintained his relaxed smile. "Something like that," he answered. Emma's lips pressed together, and her expression became more formal. "We have a very specific clientele here," she said. "Most of our cars require pre-qualification. If you're seriously interested, I can direct you to a dealership that might be more suitable for your needs." Lucas's smile didn't falter, but his eyes grew colder. "Quite the assumption," he said softly, his words carrying more weight than he intended. Emma blinked but quickly regained her composure. "I'm simply trying to save you some time," she said, her voice stiffening. "These vehicles start in the high six figures, and we like to ensure our customers are serious about their purchases." Lucas didn't respond immediately, but internally he noted her choice of words. He had expected some form of judgment, but it still stung nonetheless. He turned slightly to glance at one of the cars, a gleaming silver coupe. As he admired the sleek lines of the car, he brushed his hand over the door handle, looking back at Emma. "Nice car," he said simply. Emma's brow furrowed, though she forced another smile. "It is. But if you're seriously interested, I'd suggest we set up an appointment with one of our sales consultants." Lucas took a step back from the vehicle, his hands now tucked into his pockets. He gave her a small nod, acknowledging her request without argument. "All right then, what would you recommend for someone like me?" Emma's eyes widened slightly, in surprise at his directness. She hesitated, not used to customers being so forthright with her. "Well," she started, but before she could finish, Lucas spoke again. "If you think you know what I need, I'm all ears," he said, the challenge evident in his voice. Emma hesitated again, her polite demeanor cracking just enough to reveal impatience. "Maybe something more budget-friendly," she suggested. "I can direct you to a dealership that specializes in pre-owned vehicles." Lucas gave a faint smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Quite the assumption," he repeated softly, his tone still calm, but with a hint of sharpness. For a moment, Emma seemed caught off guard. She regained her composure quickly, though. "I'll be back with a list of options for you," she said, her voice brisk as she turned and walked away. Lucas stood still in the center of the showroom, his gaze drifting over the luxury vehicles. He wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but Emma's dismissive attitude was hard to ignore. As he looked around, he noticed the employees returning to their conversations, but a few still stole glances in his direction. The kind of scrutiny he had grown accustomed to, the silent judgment, the cautious looks, was evident. A few moments later, Emma returned. Her clipboard was now in hand, clutching it tightly as though it were a shield. Her stride was brisk, and her smile, once forced, was now replaced by something sharper. "I've compiled a few options for you," she said, stopping a few feet away from Lucas. "These might be more suitable for your situation." Lucas tilted his head slightly, intrigued. "My situation?" he asked, his voice calm but curious. Emma handed him the printout, her eyes watching him closely. "These are more accessible models," she said. "Reliable, economical, practical." Lucas scanned the list, which included a used sedan, an older SUV, and a compact hybrid. He felt a small flicker of amusement, but quickly suppressed it. Folding the paper, he slipped it into his pocket. "Appreciate the effort," he said, his voice still even. For a brief moment, Emma seemed disarmed, but she quickly recovered. Her hands rested firmly on her hips. "Listen," she said, lowering her voice, "I'm just trying to be realistic with you. Grand Lux Motors isn't for everyone, and I don't want to waste your time." Lucas met her gaze, his expression unshaken. "And what makes you think I'm not your target customer?" he asked, his voice carrying no trace of hostility, just quiet curiosity. Emma hesitated for only a moment. "I've been in this business a long time," she replied. "I can tell when someone's out of their depth." "Out of their depth," Lucas echoed, his voice neutral but thoughtful. "Interesting." Emma's certainty faltered for the briefest of moments, but she pressed on. "I'm just being honest," she said. "It's better to be upfront than have someone leave disappointed." Lucas let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head slightly. "Honesty, huh? I like honesty. How about this? Let me speak to the owner. Think we can make that happen?" Emma's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "The owner?" she asked, a mixture of confusion and surprise in her voice. Lucas smiled faintly. "Yes, the owner. I'd like to have a word with them." Emma's forced smile slipped, replaced by a more genuine look of concern. "Well, that's not possible today," she said. "The owner doesn't just drop by for casual visits. They're a very busy person." "I'm sure they are," Lucas said, nodding slightly. "But maybe you could give them a call. Let them know I'm here. I'm sure they'll want to meet me." Emma's patience was visibly wearing thin. "Look, sir," she said, her voice taking on a more forced tone. "I'm trying to be as polite as possible, but this is getting ridiculous. I have other customers to attend to. If you're serious about buying a car, we can schedule a meeting with one of our sales consultants. Otherwise..." Lucas's expression didn't change, but there was a subtle shift in the air as he stepped forward, his calm demeanor giving way to a firmness that caught Emma off guard. "Otherwise, what?" he asked, his voice still steady but now edged with quiet authority. Emma, clearly frustrated, straightened her posture. The tension between them escalated, and she didn't answer immediately. Instead, her gaze hardened as she looked Lucas up and down, her impatience bubbling just below the surface. "Otherwise," she said, her voice cold, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The words hung in the air, the weight of them heavy in the stillness of the showroom. Lucas stood rooted in place, his eyes locked on hers for a long moment. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, the soft murmur of conversations coming to a halt as the employees around them slowly turned to observe. Slowly, Lucas reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "All right," he said, his tone casual as he scrolled through his contacts. "I'll make the call myself." Emma blinked in confusion, her brows furrowing. "What are you doing?" she asked, the irritation in her voice palpable. "Just calling the owner," Lucas replied, lifting the phone to his ear with a calm ease that sent an uncomfortable shiver through the air. "Shouldn't take long." As the phone rang, Emma's confidence faltered. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. The employees around the showroom began to stop what they were doing, glancing at one another, then at Lucas. The attention in the room shifted completely from the vehicles on display to the unfolding interaction. Emma's eyes darted nervously as Lucas held the phone to his ear, his face expressionless as he casually dialed the number. His calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the tension building around him. After a few moments, he spoke softly into the phone. "Yeah, it's me," he said casually. "I'm at the dealership. Everything's fine, just a little misunderstanding. Could you let them know I'm here?" He hung up the phone and slipped it back into his pocket. The silence in the showroom was thick, and Emma stood still, her mouth slightly agape as she processed what had just happened. Who did you just call?" Emma asked, her voice quieter than before, uncertainty creeping into her tone. Lucas didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced around the showroom, meeting the eyes of the staff who were now all watching intently. The air was thick with expectation, the tension so palpable that it was nearly suffocating. "Guess we'll find out," Lucas replied, his voice almost playful, though the weight of his words hung in the air like a challenge. The employees exchanged nervous glances, whispers beginning to ripple through the room. It was clear that everyone was waiting for something, waiting for the revelation that was coming. Minutes passed, the tension growing thicker with every moment. Emma shifted uncomfortably, her previously confident posture crumbling. She fidgeted with her clipboard, her movements stiff and deliberate, betraying her unease. Lucas, on the other hand, remained calm. He stood near one of the luxury SUVs, his hands in his pockets, his face expressionless. His calm demeanor only added to the tension, and a few of the employees quietly observed him from the corners of the showroom. Finally, the silence was broken by the sound of the main door opening. A sharply dressed man in a navy suit entered, his polished shoes clicking against the tile floor. His expression was serious yet warm, and as his eyes found Lucas across the showroom, his face lit up with recognition. "Mr. Bennett," the man called out with a wide smile, extending his hand as he approached Lucas. "So good to see you." Lucas returned the handshake with a firm grip, a small, knowing smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Thanks for coming, Alex. I appreciate it," he said. The room collectively stiffened. Emma's clipboard nearly slipped from her hands as her eyes darted back and forth between Lucas and Alex. Her confusion quickly morphed into visible alarm. She stammered, "Wait, Mr. Bennett." Her voice trailed off as Alex, the regional director for the dealership, turned toward her. His friendly demeanor shifted into something more professional, almost curt. "Emma," he said, his tone businesslike now, "I see you've already met Mr. Bennett." Emma blinked, her mouth opening and closing, trying to process the situation. I didn't realize," she stammered. Alex finished her sentence for her. "Didn't realize he's the new owner of this dealership," he said, his voice sharp but understanding. He turned to Lucas, an apologetic look on his face. "I trust this wasn't your ideal welcome." Lucas raised a hand, signaling that it was all right. "It's fine, Alex," he said calmly. "I think Emma and I just got off on the wrong foot." Emma's face turned pale, and she stepped back, clutching her clipboard to her chest like a lifeline. I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't know." Lucas met her gaze, his tone still firm but gentle. "You didn't know what?" he asked, his voice even but with a quiet intensity. Emma swallowed, clearly uncomfortable. "That I could own a place like this?" Lucas asked, his words soft but pointed. "That someone like me might actually belong here?" Emma's eyes widened as the weight of the situation hit her. For a moment, she looked utterly lost. She opened her mouth to speak, but faltered. Lucas held up a hand, cutting her off. "It's fine, Emma," he said, with a small shake of his head. "Really. But let me ask you something." He stepped closer, his voice lowering just enough for everyone in the room to hear. "If I hadn't been the owner, would you have treated me any differently? Would you have given me the same respect you'd give someone walking in here wearing a suit and tie?" Emma opened her mouth, but no words came out. The silence in the showroom was deafening. All eyes were now on her, the weight of Lucas's question hanging in the air. After a long moment, Lucas nodded slightly, as if Emma's silence had already answered him. "I think we're done here," he said, his voice calm. "Let's gather everyone in the conference room. It's time we had a talk about how things are run around here." The employees filed into the sleek, modern conference room, their movements slow and deliberate as they took their seats around the polished glass table. The room, with its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the Miami skyline, was designed to impress. But today, the atmosphere was far from impressive. It felt suffocating. Emma took a seat near the back, her usual confidence now replaced with a nervous stillness. Her hands were clenched tightly in her lap, and she avoided making eye contact with Lucas. She had seen the subtle shift in his demeanor, his calm authority, and she realized, too late, the gravity of the situation. Lucas stood at the head of the table, his posture straight and commanding. His presence filled the room, and even though he wasn't shouting, there was an unmistakable authority in the way he held himself. Alex stood by the door, arms crossed, his face unreadable as he watched the staff settle into their seats. The quiet murmur of whispers died down as Lucas cleared his throat and began speaking, his voice measured and firm. "Thank you all for joining me on short notice," Lucas began, his gaze sweeping across the group. "For those of you who don't know, my name is Lucas Bennett, and as of last month, I'm the new owner of Grand Lux Motors." There was a collective murmur of surprise, though some faces remained blank, others flushed with embarrassment. Emma sank lower into her seat, her face burning with shame as she continued to avoid Lucas's gaze. "I came here today dressed casually for a reason," Lucas continued, his voice steady. "I wanted to see how this dealership operates when no one knows who I am. I wanted to experience what a potential customer might feel when walking through these doors." He paused for a moment, letting the words settle in the air. The tension in the room grew thicker, and Lucas could feel the weight of his next words hanging over everyone. "What I experienced today was disappointing," he said, his voice calm but unmistakably firm. "I was judged not for what I could bring to the table, but for how I looked. And I'm not here to single anyone out, but we need to talk about what that says about the culture of this dealership." Emma's cheeks turned crimson as she shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She had misjudged him, and the realization of her mistake was now impossible to ignore. Lucas's eyes flicked briefly toward her, but he didn't linger on her for long. Instead, he addressed the group as a whole.
"This isn't just about me," Lucas continued, his tone unwavering. "It's about every person who walks through those doors, every customer who doesn't fit into someone's preconceived notion of what a luxury car buyer looks like." One of the younger sales associates, who had been sitting in the back, raised his hand hesitantly. Lucas nodded toward him, gesturing for him to speak. "Go ahead," Lucas said. The young man cleared his throat nervously. "I think most of us try to treat customers fairly, but sometimes it's hard not to make assumptions. based on how they dress or how they present themselves. Lucas nodded thoughtfully, his expression softening just slightly. "I get that," he said. "We all have biases, whether we want to admit it or not. But here's the thing. It's not enough to just try to be fair. We have to actively challenge those biases. We need to create an environment where everyone feels respected, regardless of their appearance, their background, or anything else." He paused again, letting his words sink in before continuing. "This dealership has built a reputation for excellence, but excellence isn't just about the cars we sell, it's about the experience we provide. And from now on, that experience is going to be built on respect, inclusivity, and fairness." There was a ripple of agreement around the room. A few employees, still unsure, exchanged wary glances. But Lucas's voice carried the weight of someone who wasn't about to back down. "I know change isn't always easy," Lucas said, his voice steady, "but it's necessary. And from today, this dealership is going to lead by example. We will not only be known for the cars we sell, but for the kind of people we are. If anyone has an issue with that, now's the time to speak up." The silence in the room was deafening. The staff exchanged nervous glances, but no one spoke up. Lucas took a step forward, his gaze scanning the group. "I didn't come here today to humiliate anyone," he said, his tone gentler now, but still firm. "I came here to understand what kind of culture I've inherited and how we can make it better." His eyes moved briefly to Emma, who was still seated near the back, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Emma," Lucas said, his voice softening just enough to indicate that he wasn't attacking her. "You're an experienced manager, and I'm sure you've worked hard to get where you are. But today was a wake-up call, for you and for all of us." Emma looked up, meeting his gaze for the first time. Her voice was shaky but sincere. I understand," she said, her voice barely audible. "I was wrong. I misjudged you, and I'm truly sorry." Lucas nodded, his expression unreadable. "Thank you," he said. "I hope this experience will serve as a reminder for all of us, not just you. Because change starts with accountability, and I believe in second chances." There was a pause, and for a moment it seemed as though Emma was going to say something else, but she hesitated, her voice still unsteady. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right," she said, her eyes earnest.
Lucas smiled faintly, the kind of smile that conveyed both relief and determination. "I believe you," he said simply, "but accountability comes first. I'll be meeting with you one-on-one later to discuss next steps. For now, let's focus on moving forward." He straightened, turning his attention back to the rest of the team. "We're not just selling cars here," Lucas said. "We're building trust, creating relationships, and representing a standard of excellence. If you're on board with that, I'm here to support you every step of the way." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. The initial tension was starting to dissipate, replaced by a sense of renewed purpose. Even Alex, who had been standing quietly near the door, nodded in approval. Lucas smiled faintly, his eyes scanning the room. "All right then, let's get back to work," he said. "And remember, how we treat people matters more than anything we sell." As the employees began to file out of the conference room, Lucas noticed Emma lingering near the door. She approached him hesitantly, her hands twisting nervously in front of her. "Mr. Bennett," she began, her voice low, I want to thank you for giving me a chance to do better. I won't let you down." Lucas regarded her for a moment before responding, his voice steady but firm. "I hope you mean that, Emma. Actions speak louder than words, but I believe people can change if they're willing to try." Emma nodded, her eyes earnest. "I am," she said quietly. Lucas watched her leave, then turned to Alex. "Let's set up a meeting with the staff next week," he said. "I want to make sure everyone knows what's expected moving forward." Alex grinned, his respect for Lucas now evident. "You got it, boss," he said. As Lucas returned to the showroom, he glanced around at the luxury cars, their gleaming surfaces reflecting the afternoon sunlight. He thought about how much work lay ahead, but for the first time that day, he felt optimistic. This wasn't just about running a dealership. It was about creating something bigger, a space where people were judged by their character, not their appearance. Lucas Bennett was ready to lead the way. The story conveys several important lessons that can be applied to life, particularly regarding the themes of assumptions, respect, and inclusivity. One key message is the danger of judging others based on appearances, as seen when Emma, the manager, wrongly assumes Lucas is not a serious customer due to his casual attire. This reflects how we often make snap judgments about others based on their outward appearance or circumstances, which can lead to misunderstandings. The story also highlights the power of accountability and leadership. Lucas, by confronting the biases in his dealership, shows that true leadership isn't just about making decisions, but about fostering a culture of respect, fairness, and inclusivity. His approach, leading by example, holding people accountable, and encouraging self-reflection, teaches that real change begins with self-awareness and challenging our assumptions. Lastly, it emphasizes the importance of second chances and personal growth. Lucas's willingness to give Emma an opportunity to change, despite her mistakes, reminds us that everyone deserves the chance to learn from their errors and improve. Ultimately, this story encourages us to embrace respect for all, regardless of how others may appear, and to always challenge our biases.
If you found this video helpful or thought-provoking, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It really helps more people discover our content. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest updates from our channel. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next videos.